Well, hello everybody. This is Hal,
And this is Melanie.
and we want to welcome you back to another episode of Making Biblical Family Life Practical. I was just thinking new year and think about new things, and we just went through one of those milestone experiences in our family. Our youngest went through driver's ed.
Number 8.
Number 8. We've been around the track a few times.
I hear a lot of discussion among homeschoolers about whether to encourage their kids to get their driver's license at 16 or to wait until they're 18. I think I have really appreciated getting our kids their driver's licenses at 16.
Well, I think, it's an important discussion to have because this generation is delaying so many of the transitions to adult independence, if you will. And that's one of the statistics that they've tracked, that they look at, say, Gen X or the boomer generation and say how many high school seniors had their driver's license before they left high school. And the number has dropped significantly in recent years just because this current generation is delaying so many of those steps into grown-up behaviors, if you will. And I think it's an important thing for their development that they learn to take these responsibilities and to take these challenges.
There's just so many good things about it. For one thing, when they go through driver's ed and they have to have their learner's permit and you have to ride with them, they learn so much by just having you in the front seat paying attention. Mm-hmm. I want our kids to experience all the things about driving while I'm there with them.
Yeah, and that means I want them to drive on the interstate. I want them on winding country roads. I want them driving after dark and in the rain. And when we have snow, we don't have a lot of snow here, but I mean, when we've had snow or ice, I've taken them out on little roads and said, "Here, let's feel what a slide feels like." What does it feel like when you step on the brakes and it slips?
Well, exactly. It's such an opportunity while they're still in your home, while they're still young, while they are required to have you next to them for a year. Mm-hmm. We try to have them drive as much as is humanly possible because the research shows that hours behind the wheel is the biggest predictor of safety in a young person driving. The more hours behind the wheel they have, the more safely they drive.
So we got some real life examples of this here in our home state of North Carolina. Our county has a lot of rural highways, and 10 years ago, there was a very high accident rate among the teenage drivers. And one of the things that really helped that was they started putting a lot more emphasis on the driver's ed program and a lot longer period of supervised driving before they got the full, the restricted license, which allowed them to solo, so to speak. And that really has seen a great improvement in the performance of student drivers and their safety out on the highway. So, it makes sense that this works because this is the same model that Jesus used to train his disciples. That he demonstrated what he was doing in the ministry and the teaching and healing and whatnot. He demonstrated for them, and then he brought them alongside himself and allowed them to work with him for a time before he turned them loose. And I think, that's a very good model to say, let's do this together side by side so you can ask me questions and I can give you direction.
I'll tell you another good reason to get your kid your driver's license. Y'all, why are you hauling your kids all over creation when they can drive themselves? Mm-hmm. I have friends that it's like a part-time job for them, hauling all their different kids to all the different places they need to be. Yeah. When, you can not only send them, but you can say, "Hey, on the way home, stop at Walmart and pick up my groceries."
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's just, it reduces family stress so much when there's more drivers in the house.
Right.
It gives our kids an opportunity to stretch and to gain responsibility and independence. Mm-hmm. It prepares them for adulthood because they get to learn while you're next to them instead of being thrust into it. I don't want to see a new driver driving off to college. They need experience before they get away from their parents.
Right.
And I just think there's just so many benefits. And yes, it is expensive on your insurance. One of the things we do to motivate our kids to drive safely is we tell them that we'll pay their car insurance until they graduate from college.
Okay.
Unless they get a ticket.
Mm-hmm.
If they get a ticket, they get their own insurance plan, and it's high.
Most of them have saved the money.
Yes.
Most of them have watched their step and have done the right thing. We had, well, I think one got some
Yes.
minor ticket, but said, "Oh, that's it.
You're off."
You're off." And I think others took their lesson from that one. But
Yes.
but yeah, I mean, and I think that's all of what you're saying there is very true, and it's really useful, to consider that we are training adults. We have these young people that are in training to be independent adults, and the more experience and opportunity that we can give them while they're at home, and they can be supervised and encouraged and coached, then the better the outcome's going to be when they do leave our homes. And
Well, that's the truth.
And driving is just one example. There's so many other things about being able to cook for yourself, being able to handle money responsibly, being able to make decisions and know how to pick up the phone and call a doctor if you need an appointment. I mean, those are adult level tasks, and there's some surprising hesitation among some 18, 20, and 22-year-olds to do those basic kind of tasks because they've never been asked to do them.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so driving, I think, teaching them to drive is one of those things that has so many benefits beyond just you've acquired a skill. But, I mean, there's so many ways that works for the benefit of the family as well.
Well, I think there's just a lot to be said for it. But let's talk some about the mechanics of driver's ed, because all this seems really scary when this is your first child. The laws vary by state. Some
Yes.
states actually allow you to teach driver's ed to your child using an online program.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Parent-led driver's ed.
Yeah.
In our state, you have some options. You can arrange for it to be taught privately, which costs $500 or $600.
Right. Or you can go to a driver's school. I saw
Yes.
one of their cars out on the road this morning.
Yeah. Well, that's what I meant by privately, to go to a driver's school.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Or you can do it through the local high school, which in our area cost about, I think it was $85.
Yeah.
And
Pretty minimal.
that's what we've done. And yes, that's a little unnerving. In our state, it's a 30-hour course plus an extra 6-hour scare you straights course kind of.
Right.
And they either go all day every day for 5 days during the summer, or they during the school year it's 3 hours after school for 10 or 14 days, something like that. And I've always been a little nervous about that because I know that public school can be harsh. I was a public school student.
Yeah. So was I.
But it's been actually a pretty good experience for our kids because it convinced them they never wanted to go to public school.
Yeah, there's that has been a little unexpected benefit of going to driver's ed, because they get kind of a little toe in the water experience of of being in that school environment and in that culture for a few days or a few weeks, and most of them, I think it's good for us homeschoolers sometimes when our kids have an opportunity to at least see inside there and realize, this is not like a Disney musical. It's not
so boring.
It's boring, and the people involved are not all kind and warm-hearted people like you're used to in your family. And
although this last time, the kids never even had a chance to exchange a word. They kept such a tight control over them, and it was just so boring, though our daughter thought she was going to lose her mind.
Yeah.
But so what do? You Google your state's driver's ed laws. And if it's at the local school, then you Google the name of your local high school and driver's ed. And you contact them. In our county, you just show up at the parents' meeting, and you register at the parents' meeting, and then they tell them when to show up. And some of our kids have learned a lot through driver's ed. Some of our kids have had really good teachers who taught them good, strong safety things, and others, it was a waste of time. This last child, it was pretty much a waste of time. It was just badly taught and very dry and very boring, and I thought very ineffective. But what it did is it opened the opportunity for us to then get her learner's permit at 15. Y'all, I apologize about all the puppy noise. Our dogs are alarmed because our girls are out of town and they think we should get in the car and go look for them right now. So they're being a little bit more trouble than usual.
And it's also true. Okay, let's just real be honest and transparent. There's nobody that's more particular about the rules of the road than a student driver, and so we have a reliability check. We have Q&A on mom and dad's driving habits every time we have a student go through this, because they've been hearing it in class and say, did you come to a complete stop at that stop sign? Well, yeah, but maybe not to lock the brakes kind of stop. Okay, yeah, you're right. So, so we get that kind of feedback, and I tell you one thing I have found about this too is teaching a young person to drive is a great opportunity to grow in grace.
Isn't that the truth?
It is a great opportunity to learn patience. When you realize that losing your temper or panicking and reacting does not help that young driver to calm down and to relax behind the wheel. You need to be able to take a deep breath and unclench your fists and say, okay, honey, you need to check the mirrors better.
Now, in our state, they're required to get 10 hours of practice behind the wheel with the driver's ed instructor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we recommend you go to an empty parking lot. A community college on a Sunday afternoon is a great place.
Uh-huh.
Go to an empty parking lot and practice with them some first, because a lot of driver's ed instructors kind of assume they've driven before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why they do.
Mm.
But they get 10 hours of behind the wheel, but that's not nearly enough. They need you.
Mm-hmm.
They need you to insist they drive every time you get in the car. And they need you to help them and to help say, watch out now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a stop sign coming.
Mm-hmm.
You need to slow down.
Right.
You're drifting a little bit, correct.
Mm-hmm.
And give them guidance and help so that they learn to drive safely. It's such a big thing.
Well, and again, like we said, we want our kids to experience as many different road conditions and traffic conditions as they're likely to encounter driving on their own. And so, that means, you want them behind the wheel sometimes when it's dark or in rush hour traffic.
Well, our friends have been kind of surprised because, we have friends that would not let their kids drive on the interstate for months and months, or would not let them drive in our capital city. We've kind of taken the opposite stance, where I want them to drive in the capital city. I want them to drive in rush hour traffic.
Because eventually they will be.
And most accidents happen within a few blocks of home.
Right.
So that's not, restricting them to a few blocks of home does not help the safety issue.
No.
It just limits their experience.
Right.
I want them to have lots and lots of experiences while they're with me.
Another thing we've done too, we travel a lot with a trailer, and we've made a point that our student drivers drive the van pulling a trailer.
And that has really paid off, because I remember a situation, you just never know when your child's going to be in a situation where they're going to need certain knowledge. One of our sons had just recently gotten his driver's license, and we were speaking, I think, at the Arizona conference. And he and I went to pick up some supplies we needed from the booth from, I think it was Sam's Club. And it took longer than we expected. And we got back to the conference center, and I had to speak in just a few minutes. There wasn't time for me to go park the van and trailer.
Right.
And so we had purchased a surface lot parking space. He
Mm-hmm.
knew where it was. I said, okay, son, drop me off, and you go park this where we'd arranged.
Now, I think he was 16, so
He had his license.
He had his license.
He had his license.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he drops me off. I go speak. I did not even find out about this till that workshop was over. Hour and a half later,
Yeah.
He had gotten to the surface lot, and they had given away his space.
Right.
And there was no place to park. And he had to use the initiative to find the person in charge,
Mm-hmm.
to tell them he had paid for the spot, to show them the receipt. And then the only spot they had was a very narrow place to park that huge van and trailer
Mm-hmm.
in a parking garage.
Yeah.
But he had experience with the trailer. He'd driven it with us lots of times. And
Mm-hmm.
so he was able to get the trailer in there, get it safely parked, and took care of it.
Right.
Would I have given him that huge responsibility if I'd known? No way.
No.
But you prepare your kids for all kinds of things because you don't know what they're going to face when they're without you.
Right. Right.
Well, guys, go get your kids' driver's ed if they're the right age. In our state, they have to be 14 and a half. It may be different in your state.
And recognize, too, that your child and your child's friends, okay, the cohort that they're in is going to have an influence, too. So many of them are very anxious and very fearful to begin with, and they need the encouragement to say, you can do this. You can handle this, and I'm going to help you learn how to handle it so you're comfortable with it. I know we had one who was very hesitant to learn to drive because, well, that's just a lot of responsibility. Yes, it is, and we want you to pick that responsibility up. We want you to be able to do it. So, you need to take the initiative to encourage them as well as give them the opportunity.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, look, I do agree, and like I said, this is number 8 for us, and so.
So we're almost done with teaching kids to drive. Yay!
Yeah, but we're almost run out of spare drivers.
That's true, and that's sad.
That's a sad thing.
It'll be sad when it's just you and me that can go to the store, Hal.
Yeah, really. Nobody else can run the errands anymore.
That's right.
So, look, do your best and encourage those young adults that you're raising up, and enjoy the extra hands that introduces into your family economy.
Yep.
Look, we appreciate you joining us. We look forward to talking with you again soon. Until next time, I'm Hal.
And I'm Melanie.
Thanks. God bless you.
Bye, y'all.
You've been listening to Making Biblical Family Life Practical with Hal and Melanie Young. If you found this program interesting, challenging, and encouraging, why not join us on the web at halandmelanie.com. That's HALANDMELANIE.com. Or follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook at Facebook/Hal and Melanie or Facebook.com/Raising Real Men. This program is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. Join us next week when we'll be back to talk about making biblical family life practical. Until then, thank you and God bless you for listening.